So in this segment, we're going to be discussing the UK is a failed developed country, and by what I mean is people compare the UK to kind of um, countries they call third world countries, even though they don't really know what that term really means. But typically, if you're a politics nerd, like a real nerd, you'd call it the global south. It's kind of developing countries. Is how I would describe it. There are different levels of developing countries, but the UK, in my opinion, is a failed developed country, and I would say the US is probably the same. But when you live in a country that's meant to be wealthy, it's one of the wealthiest countries in the world, per capita as well. It's just very gross what's happening here. People struggling to afford food. So let's go into the first clip.
This is people saying they've had to buy less food. Again, that half the population, 48%.
And it's obviously because of inflation.
Which isn't great. But then take a look at this little pink line just down there. That line is people saying they've experienced running out of food and not being able to afford more in the last 2 weeks. At the moment, that's 5% of adults. Chris, we're a population of 67 million people. That little pink line represents millions of people not being able to afford food. And when you look at the detail again, it gets uncomfortable. So, if you're a single parent, more affected. 28% of single parents have run out of food. Mixed or multiple ethnicity, more affected, 14%. If you're Black, African, Caribbean, or Black British, you are more affected. 13% of them have run out of food. Again, this is a cost of living crisis. It is not an equal crisis.
And that's kind of one of the points. It's not an equal crisis. Vast majority of people are struggling. You got 48% of people having to cut back, but you got that 5% figure of adults, not being able to afford food. Going without food. That's going to cause a health crisis. But also, it doesn't account for children. Parents often won't eat so their kids can eat. But what happens when you get into a situation where the kids can't eat? There was that very famous clip on, I think it was Channel 4 Dispatches, where there was a kid who said, we try not to eat a lot on some days. And this kid, he was very skinny. Very skinny. It was scary, I'll be honest. Kind of Robert Peston was talking on the back of this. Some of the stuff is older, but I feel like it's important, and his channel doesn't do breaking news. Peston talks about that 5% figure, and he talks about the kind of the breakdown of it, but he finds it shocking that this from the ONS. Does anyone in the year of austerity really find this that shocking? I'll be honest, I don't. If you follow what's been happening over the last 10 years closely enough, it's not true. And it's John McDonnell, funnyish meme. Young adults, renters are among the most affected. I mean, if you look at what's happening with rents in this country, it's just maddening. You got security tags on milk. Cost of living crisis. Supermarket shoplifting soar by 75%. Honestly, I've never in my life did I imagine people would put security tags on milk. The milk prices have shot up dramatically, but it's mad. UK supermarket food prices up by more than 25% in the last 2 years, says Which. The last 2 years is just, they talk about inflation being at, between 7 and 9% or whatever. Their figures are nonsense, I'll be honest, but food prices up by 25% is nuts. Absolutely nuts. 25% has gone up by. Wow. I cannot believe it. This clip from LBC and Sangeeta, this is talking about the dentistry in this country.
How did you pull out your tooth, James? Did you use a...
Pair of pliers.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I have found it really hard to find a dentist, an NHS dentist. I can't afford private, not in a million years. And I've been looking for near enough 2 years.
It's very hard, and if you have an NHS dentist, don't take them for granted, honestly, because if you go private, it can cost you significantly more depending on where you live, and it's just a nightmare all round.
On a couple of occasions, I've had to do a little bit of work on myself to take the teeth out, which isn't great. But
you can cause yourself other problems. You can get infections. You need the nerve when you take the teeth out. You need the nerves to be. I think the nerve ends to be closed off properly, so then they don't cause you more problems down the line. This has been happening for a lot longer than you think. They've had kind of dentistry kind of charities or companies working in this country where they were meant to be in developing countries, and they're in certain areas in England because people can't afford to see a dentist. or they don't have access to a dentist. And this is supposedly one of the richest countries in the world where people don't have access to a dentist. Honestly,
You
With
mean
the
you've
pain-
done work on yourself, James?
The first one at the same time, and I defy anybody to tell me that this is not sort of torture, but I had toothache and earache at the same time, and it was both on the same side of my head, on the left side. And I had to take one of the middle teeth out because it was wobbly. I couldn't really chew much because every time I did, it was somebody, I don't know, pressing a hot poker in the side of my face. And so I decided to get jolly one night, and then I just took the thing out.
you know, if you've never had tooth pain like this, honestly, it's some of the worst pain you could ever have. Honestly, I've had it before. Brush your teeth, kids. Bad things will happen. NHS dentists, people having to drive hundreds of miles, unacceptable. And obviously the fact that they're not meant to be taking on patients who live so far away. You've got obviously Brexit playing a part in kind of the food costs going up as well. So you've got kind of cost of food going up by 25%. It could go up further, but don't worry though. The Bank of England said they're not going to go up as much. They're not going to raise the interest rates as much because inflation is apparently slowing down, which is obviously capped. But we also know that inflation is going to stay. It's going to be stagflation. It's going to stay consistently high, especially as food prices might go up because of more Brexit checks. And kind of wanted to bring kind of your attention to this, which is some shops are warning of no-go areas. So COP is warning of no-go areas for shops because the shoplifting amounts are so high. I know we've kind of discussed this on stream, but honestly, there were about 1,000 cases of crime, shoplifting, antisocial behaviour in its obviously co-op shops every day in the past 6 months to June. 1,000 cases. Honestly, just mad. And the police aren't taking this seriously. Many police forces did not prioritise retail crime, with an average of 71% of serious retail crime not responded to by police. So even when the shops call the police are like, I missed the part where that's my problem. They're going all Tobey Maguire on you. You can see the increase is significant, even kind of pre-pandemic. The numbers are bad, but now they're just going further beyond. And the other problem is, like, some shops might not even bother kind of telling the police anymore, because what's the point? They're not going to turn up. The only reason you do it is maybe because of insurance, but if you're constantly making insurance claims, it's going to go, your insurance premium is going to go up. It's just, this is a failing country. The UK is a failed developed country. It doesn't have the problems kind of developing countries have, but we've also seen people die of starvation in this country as well. People have died of poverty here. So you can be a developed country, you can have kind of the fancy roads and the infrastructure and all of these other things, right? But if you live in a country where people kind of die of starvation, are you really a developed country at that point? I don't know. Maybe we need to make special definitions for the UK, because we're just world beating, and how many other developed nations, kind of G7 members, GC, where people die of starvation in this country, like people who should be entitled to welfare, don't receive it because the system is kind of designed to either force you into work, or if you can't work or whatever, they just put you on the scrap heap. Genuinely, I'm just so kind of I just find it astounding, honestly. Like this is what the Tories have pushed us to, and despair is kind of one of the things. Apathy is another thing, and for a country that's meant to be so wealthy to be in this position, it just squandered all of this wealth, and it just allows certain people to get away with things. It's just sad. Honestly, it's just so sad. The UK's kind of fumbled really big, and I think it's a marker to a lot of the other countries, especially the ones on the come up now, who are kind of on the top end of developing nations, to really, I would say, look at the politicians in the UK and think, this could be you. This could easily be you. And I don't mean just because of Brexit. This isn't just caused by Brexit. This is what austerity can do to a country. Some people kind of compared the austerity that they've seen in kind of certain countries to the UK. Like the UK's austerity was worse than Ireland's. And Ireland had, the Troika and other kind of things involved when it had a huge bailout. The austerity in the UK was worse than the austerity in Ireland. People don't. I think the problem is a lot of people got interested in, a lot of international people got interested in politics around Brexit, so they missed 2010 to 2015 and the damage the Tories did in those years. I think it was 300,000 people died of austerity. More people died of austerity than they did the pandemic. That's unbelievable. Honestly, it just saddens me to no end. But I haven't got any much more to say on this apart from the UK is a failed developed country, and it's just tragic. But anyways, like, comment, share, subscribe. Probably a weird way to end this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and obviously if you are in this situation, people having the inability to buy food or going without, I really hope your situation improves, because this is just a disaster zone, honestly. But hopefully I'll catch you in the next one.